Hey everybody, welcome, welcome, welcome. We have Pascal Campion on the line. You know the drill, like, hey, everybody, thank you for joining us this Saturday morning. Uh, and hope everyone's doing well. Um, let us know, where you're coming from, what time it is over there. Boston, hello, Brittany, Boston. Ariel, hey, what's going on? Uh, you're on with Scotland. Oh my goodness. Manila, Mauritius, India. So Pascal, like people are coming from around the world. That's why these panels are great. Not only can we connect with people from around the world, but attendees can connect with each other from around the world, which is fantastic. Hey Raven, what's up? What's up? Kylie in the building, and it's so hot in Florida. Indonesia. They can hear you too, Pascal. So feel free to,
Hey, actually, I was wondering about that. Hello.
Yeah. Oh.
It's kind of nice to hear you DJ this whole thing. It's really fun.
Yeah. Everybody say hey to Pascal. Me and Pascal are in the same city. Pascal, you're Glendale, right? Glendale or Burbank?
Burbank. I am. See where Portos is in Burbank?
Yeah. Oh, you're right by Portos.
Almost
That's dangerous, man.
Yeah, I'm almost across the street.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, and then so you've been there since you've been down to LA. I remember you told me that you were kind of moving within Burbank area. Is that the only place you've been in, like in the Valley, like Burbank area, or did you make a few new moves, like when you moved?
No, when we came down here from the Bay Area, we moved to Burbank. We moved from one house to another, but within Burbank.
Right.
So and then I have the studio here for the past 3 years, I would say. 2.5, 3 years.
Are you so how many years? So do you feel like you're getting acclimated to Southern California then?
The heat, no. Like the summers here are brutal for me. But no, I do. There are a lot of stuff about LA like I discovered I did not know before. Living here, as opposed to like I used to come down all the time for CTN and then
Yeah,
over to Comic Con on the way back. Yeah. So I knew Burbank a little bit because of this. Living here, there's so much more to discover, and so my previous experience of LA does not match what living in LA is, and it's so much better to live here than it is to just visit it. I feel, at least.
Gotcha.
Because there's so many more like kid-friendly activities, parks and mountains to go hiking and biking and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, but you love that stuff, right? You love.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And then I was afraid coming down here. I kept refusing to move down to LA, especially at the beginning of my career when I was working for the studios. I didn't want to move down to LA because I was afraid of being stuck in a car. I had this image of LA, and each time it would come, I remember like the first movie I was working on for DreamWorks, I would come down. I would fly down from San Francisco to Burbank Airport. The car would be waiting for me and would drive me to the DreamWorks campus. And for me, it was all just like concrete canyons because it was just like where they are is really not pretty.
Yeah.
So I was like, I would never, ever want to live here. And then when I finally moved here, I was like, wait, this is so much better than I expected. And I wish I had done before.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you, Pascal. So Pascal, he's in a position where he won't be on camera, but we will. You don't have to just kind of see me. We will be like sharing his work as we go through this panel. But yeah, he'll be off camera for this panel, but we will luckily get to hear his insight and how he approaches his work, his beautiful illustration work. So, but thank you everyone for being here. 11:06. Let's get started. Thank you everybody. Thank you Pascal again for doing this, man. I think I met you like a decade ago. I think.
Actually, I remember meeting you.
Yeah. It was like San Diego Comic Con.
San Diego Comic Con. You came by, and I remember like the first thing I noticed is like the size of your arms because you had this sort of like tank top on. And I was like, dang, that guy works out. You were working at Arena Nets, I think, at the time. Is that correct?
Oh my God, you got an amazing.
No, well, you made an impression on me because you had such an energy about you.
I cannot believe that you remember the actual game studio name, but amazing. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and so you came by, and we talked. You're saying you're a big fan. You wanted to break into features, I think. You were going to go to school, either animation mentor or something like this, or something like that.
Yes.
And then in the evening, we were at a Disney party or something on the rooftop. It was some sort of party.
Yep.
And I saw you there again.
Yeah.
And then we chatted again, and I was like, oh yeah. Then I remembered you.
Oh my gosh, man, that's really humbling. Yeah, I can't believe you remember all that. And I remember that night, I was meeting all of these like heroes, like because like so for the attendees, it's like, you know, I lived in Seattle, Washington. The animation industry, me and Pascal were just talking about this. The animation industry felt like so far away, even just from Seattle, Washington. You go down to San Diego Comic-Con, you go to this Disney TV party, and I remember it's on the rooftop. And I remember like meeting you, Bobby Chu, heroes of mine, Steven Silver, and I remember meeting like Alex Hirsch, and this was like I remember remember he was there, and like this was even way before Gravity Falls. And
Gravity Falls
way before Fish
later,
Books. And he was like, I was like, hey man, can I show you my short film that I'm doing at an animation mentor? And he gave me like advice and that kind of stuff. And he was super nice, super gracious, and very funny. Yeah, I felt like I'd met so many heroes just from going down that one San Diego Comic-Con. But anyway, it's not about me. This is about you, Pascal, and us catching up actually, really too. So I'm gonna share my screen, guys, so you don't have to see me anymore. So this should be good. Pascal, let me know if you see what you see. You see stuff.
I see the images. It's funny because you start with some of the ones that have done like the past like few months. It's like
perfect.
When so I guess like when we realized I wasn't going to be on camera, like I sent a bunch of images to Bobby. Like I sent some from the very early days of me doing like daily sketches, so you guys could see your progression. These are more of the later ones, and I don't know how to control that, but hopefully they'll get to the first ones. But so what I was thinking I was going to do is I was just going to like talk about who I am, where I come from, my whole like background from growing up, going to school, coming to the US, and working in the animation industry. And hopefully at that point you guys will have questions because I'll run out of stuff to say fairly quickly. So is that okay with you guys? I can't with this full screen stuff. I can't actually see if there's any questions or stuff, but someone said yes. Okay, cool. So my name is Pascal Campion. I'm an artist living in Burbank and working in a bunch of different things. I was actually born in the U.S. A lot of people think I was born in France, but I was born in the U.S. My father was American, my mom was French, and my parents separated when I was a baby. So I was born in New Jersey, but I have no memory of it. I went back to France before I was 2 years old. So the cool thing about this is like I had an American passport. Grew up in France. I was really into graphic novels growing up, and American comics. My dad would send me American comics from the U.S., and I would read all the graphic novels that we had available in France, which was everywhere at the time. In the late 70s, early 80s, it felt like you couldn't go anywhere without seeing a graphic novel, from Asterix to Tintin to Gaston Lagaffe to all the other ones. And I was really, really into them. But it really sucked at drawing though. I knew by the time I was 10 years old, I knew I wanted to do something and storytelling, graphic novels. That was my goal. Either in comics, and either I wanted to draw for Marvel Comics, or I wanted to do graphic novels in France. But I was really bad at drawing. Like, I mean, really, really, really bad at drawing. To the point where I went to my teacher when I was 10 years old. My art teacher, I had an art teacher in junior high, and I showed him my work and told him like I want to be an artist. And he looked at me and says like, Pascal, I don't think you have it. I really don't think you should pursue this ambition of yours. And I was like, wow. I was fairly devastated, but it also made me want to work harder to prove him wrong, which is what I did. So I've been trying to find this teacher for like the past 20 years, and I can't. So too bad. But so that's the point of this is like I didn't have a natural gift for drawing. Anybody in class would draw better than me, even if I drew constantly. And it was only until I got maybe into my second year in high school that I started getting a little bit better, where I was starting getting to fan magazines in high school, and I was just working a lot. And then when I went through high school and I got out of high school, I had a bit of a floating moment there, and I got into this art school in France called École des Arts Décoratifs de Strasbourg, and it was a really cool but odd school. First is the process to get into school was fairly I don't want to say difficult, but it was fairly intense. It's like, they would receive 5,000 applications, but they could only take 100. So they would do a first triage of the portfolios, keep 1,000, and then they would ask you to come to the school, and for a whole week you would go through all those, like, every day you would have different sessions of like exercises to do, and then they would just like not necessarily eliminate as the day went on, but they would like select people, and at the end of it, of all those thousands, they would only keep 100. So I was able to get into the school, and I was so excited to get in there. And then I remember the shock that when I got there, the first few days, they're like, so what do you like to do? And I like to draw. Great. So you're going to do wood, and you're going to do metal, and you're going to do paper. And I'm like, but I want to draw. So I was like, yes, but in this school, we want to open you up to all the different possibilities of art before you choose something with which you're going to be stuck with. So for the first, and it worked, because for the first few years, I did different things like design, sculpture, and paper, which I didn't know were such amazing ways to express yourself. And it really changed my way of seeing art and illustrations, because I went to the school thinking I was going to learn how to draw anatomy and color and stuff like this, so I could go and do like Marvel comics or graphic novels. And in fact, this school has like no classes of anatomy or color or composition or any of that. It was a school that was really different. So the first year was just a sort of like you learn everything except the stuff you wanted to do. But then afterwards, if you're able to get into your section, I went to illustration, then you would focus on storytelling. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because they were really focused on not teaching you any form of art per se, meaning like they never taught us how to draw, but they taught us how to tell stories through images. And that's important, because some kids in our class did not draw at all. They would take pictures, they would cut out images from magazines and recreate images. This one girl was creating all those like illustrations, like key bags. There's this one kid who take like 3 or 4 colored pencils in his hand and draw with them, and it was amazing. And what was cool about that is like it really helped me see different approaches to art. I don't know if it's the same thing for you, but like growing up, I had like a very specific idea, like this is how art should be, this is how comics should be, and it should be no other way. Anything else is not valid. And I got there, and I was realizing that my understanding of art was so small, and there were so many other possibilities. And it really helped me break through my fear of drawing. Not that I had a fear of drawing, but like I never considered myself a good drawer, and still to this day, I still don't think I can draw very well. But I have a way of telling a story through simple, like the image that was on the screen of the football players, or even this one. These are very simple shapes, but then you get the whole sense of motion, the whole sense of story. Even this is just sketchy, and it feels very sturdy, but it's all eyeballs. So this school is really cool for very good for teaching us how to tell stories, making sure we put into the images what we wanted to put, that the audience understood what we wanted to understand and nothing else, all that sort of stuff, and then play with those things. And then and that school had no grades, we had assignments, but we didn't have to turn them in if we didn't want to. There was no like finals at the end. It was just a thing where like every semester you had to like meet with a jury and show them what you had done, and then talk with them, and then they would decide if you had grown enough to go to the next level. And then in order to graduate from the school, the last year you had to have you had to make 3 projects, and 2 of them had to be professional projects, meaning you had to have at least 1 published or contracts or something like that. It was a very interesting school, very different than expected. And in fact, a lot of kids that went to the school did not like the fact that there was no hard classes, no hard skills to learn. It really suited me. I absolutely adored it. But once I graduated from that school, I left and I came to the U.S. I mean, I spent the summer in France, and then I came to the U.S.
Wow.
And mainly because I wanted to try it out. I wanted to see what living in the U.S. Not come in on a holiday, because I would come a lot. I would come to visit my dad. I lived in Alaska a little bit. I lived in the Virgin Islands, or state really, in those places. But I never actually had been on the main land and stay there as an adult. So I went there, and I was thinking that I was going to come to the U.S., stay here for a year, and then go back to France and work in graphic novels. So I packed my suitcase, took all my money, which was like a little bit under $500, which to me was a lot of money at the time.
Yeah.
And I came to the U.S. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
Came to the U.S. One of my brothers was already living here. Was living in Kansas City, so I landed in Kansas City. And then one of the first things he did when we got there is like he drove around town and bought all those parts for a computer and built me a computer. So I had my own computer. I had touched computers a little bit before that. Oh yeah, I had like an experience in Boston. I can talk about it later. But I had my own computer. I got a copy of Flash and started playing around with Flash. And then one thing I realized with Flash is like, you can do all those drawings. Flash was I don't know if you guys know it. It was like Harmony, but before Harmony, much simpler. But this vector thing where you can draw and click enter and the images play as a sequence. So I started doing this and I discovered animation. I didn't care for animation at all growing up. It was still not on my radar. It was not. I had never seen the Disney movies. Actually, I only saw Lion King a few years ago when they re-released it because I took my kids to it. I still haven't seen Little Mermaid and things like that. I've seen more of them now because I have kids and we watch them together.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, it's just not my thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. And like, I think you coming over to the US and just trying it. I think naturally, I was looking at your stuff because you sent me this gallery. Like your aesthetic was like super different in the beginning, like years ago.
Yep.
And so that led me to the question, Pascal, of like, in the beginning, did you kind of have the mindset as like we all do when we're first starting out? Did you kind of have the mindset that your art is not growing as quickly as you would want it, or that it's, going to take time? That sort of a little bit like that kind of like frustration of like, oh, okay, how do I get better? I have the great taste, but like I'm not there yet. And then how did you deal with that?
Oh, interesting. That's a real interesting question. I don't think I had the mentality because I wasn't focused on the look of the art as much. I was all about sketching. I was all about like telling stories with a simple style as possible. When I found Flash, all the images you see on screen now, they're all done in Flash. And I drew like this because that's what Flash allowed me to do. I had this thing where like, how can I explain this? I knew that I wasn't the best drawer in the world. I don't know if that makes sense, the best draftsman. But I knew I could tell a story. So for me, any mark that would resemble something that you could recognize worked. What it did is like, it allowed me to let go of all my feelings of like, I don't know anatomy, I don't know color, I don't like look at this image, the anatomy and this is all over the place, right? But the energy was there. Like same thing for this. I understood space a little bit better because I worked really hard on that. But it was all about like making marks that could be recognized as something. And then by putting them together, I would create an image that gave you the sense of like depth and perspective. Color came much later. I really sucked at color. I have some students from France that were in class with me that had really funny stories about my first tries in color that were absolutely horrible.
I wouldn't say that.
No. The first ones were really horrible. And to this day, like people always like comment on my colors where I really have a very small understanding of color. I have a pretty good understanding of lighting. And I'm better at color now than I was like, let's say like 5, 6 or 10 years ago, but I'm still not like, I'm not a color guy at all. It was just really bizarre because people tend to hire me for that. But to come back to your question, I didn't have that particular issue, but the fact that those drawings are different, and I was going to come to it in a minute, it's because these were done in Flash, right? It's called vector. And in 2015, my computer broke. I had this old PC that I had for like 80 years or so, from when I had gone not to the US, but like around that time.
Sure.
And then when I got a new computer, my version of Flash, which was a version from 2002, did not work anymore. So I was forced to go to something else. And the alternative I had was Photoshop. So I went to Photoshop. And that's why my drawings change from those
Sure.
to what they became afterwards. Because I was really happy with this actually.
Yeah.
Mainly because it was very, very fast to do. I was more focused at the time. I was still doing a whole lot of animation.
Yes.
I was still more into like wanting to do animations, and then this
Yes.
was just for fun.
Yes.
And animation was my main job.
Yes.
So I was doing all those commercials. And,
Got it.
so that's a good question. But now I do have the feeling, meaning like now I feel because now that like when I work in Photoshop, it's much slower. Like, those types of images will take me half an hour, 45 minutes.
Gotcha.
And now in Photoshop, it takes me over an hour. And if I want to do good images, it can take up to 2 hours.
Yeah.
And now I do have more time to spend on an image. So I do think about like the way it looks, and I do feel like, I really can't draw well at all. Oh, I have to work on that. So it has this sort of like mentality coming in, right? But it's just because of like the setup. Yeah. It's an interesting thing.
Sure.
But good question.
No, I mean, I think you will see attendees that Pascal is probably one of the most humble artists that we've ever met in our lives. Pascal like wakes up every day, makes a beautiful illustration in an hour or two. It takes, well, I mean, you know, like I tell everybody, the best artists in the industry are the most humble. I will embarrass you with that one, Pascal, but you are very, very kind and humble. I wanted to ask you another question too, Pascal, and I'm very, very interested in this, like from a personal standpoint of like, what pushed your art to be more about family and your kind of self-journey and experiences?
Literally my daughter being born. It's
Wow.
like those images right here. These were done after 2007, and it's funny. It is such a switch that happened in my brain. Because before that, it was all those images you saw before with the elephants, the dogs, the all the fun ones. And then when my daughter was born, or actually when we were pregnant with my daughter, when I was pregnant with my daughter, my mind changed, and it wasn't something I tried to do. I wasn't even aware I was doing it. Because those sketches that you see there is like I would do them every morning before starting work. I was at the time I was working on Leapfrog. And I would go there in the morning, and then since I wasn't drawing for work, I was trying to do sketch every morning. Yeah. And when and I got a habit of this, and then when Lily was born, I wasn't working there anymore. But like I had this habit of just doing whatever came to my mind first.
Wow.
And something happened, and I was trying to like not control what came out like that, right? Stuff like this. I was just I have an image of football. Right. And when Katrina, my wife, was pregnant with Lily. All of a sudden I had all those images of like kids coming up. And then when she was born, that was like, oh my God, I was so in love with like having a new baby, being a father, being like, it just completely changed, not just the themes, but the moods of my images, where I had more like those like darker type of moods, more introspective, because I was just starting to think more, I think probably because I was thinking more about like what I should be doing with my life. I need to like, grow up or whatever. And now I have 3 kids, so these came even after. That was still in the Bay Area, but like that, that's the images that came to me.
I love that one.
I love that. That's why I put it in there. But that's it's throughout my career. As the kids got older, as my career has changed, or life has evolved, my work has evolved as well, and that was something that was pretty big about like. Trying not to hold on to that look, right? That look worked really well for the person I was at that time. And when I look back at them, I'm like, oh my God, this is like a different person, right? It's like,
man, I just got goosebumps
10 years ago.
Said that. I just got goosebumps. Yeah. Sorry,
but it's true, because it's like visiting an old friend. And I'm looking at them and like, I had that person who drew this is not the same person today. It's part of me, but it's not me. I don't. It's different. So I look at those and I'm like, this. I can appreciate them more now than I did at the time. At the time, I was trying. You can tell I was trying to go fast. I was making sure not to clean up everything because I really want to capture this like quick gestural sketching, and that was still all in Flash. And I'm like, wow, it's there was something in my brain at the time that I don't have anymore. Right. It's been replaced by other stuff, not better or worse, just different. Right. And so I can look back at this and really, really appreciate what it was. And what it is, and if it doesn't, like, oh, it's supposed to be that.
No, that's great, man. That's man, this image is every image.
Like
Yeah, we can go on and on about like every image, but like I wanted to also know, Pascal, too, of just kind of like, there are a lot, there are many young artists who are, we kind of struggle with prioritizing and balancing our lives while making art, right? So like, what is
yeah.
it like making art while being this family man, while being a father? Like, how do you balance that?
It's a lot of guilt feeling happening. It's just funny because I was just thinking about that the other day. It's honestly it's hard and easy at the same time. It's a weird thing. It's like it's like when you imagine having like 6 fingers, it's really hard for you to imagine because you never had it, right?
Right.
So when people tell you, oh, when you're gonna have a child, your life is gonna change, and you're like, sure, 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 and you imagine it with what you know at the time.
Sure. Yeah.
And then it happens, and you realize, oh my God, it is like growing a 6th arm or something else. Like it's hard to imagine before because you've never had a particular feeling. So so being a new dad, and then especially after once we had the twins, because we had twins, it was like I was a whole new person with a whole new life and a whole new responsibility, and I was adjusting to it. The cool thing about it is like I was still young enough that I had all this energy, so I would only sleep a few hours a night and draw a lot, but I would spend most of my time just getting up, getting the kids up, getting them ready for school or for whatever. My wife took the lion's share of that, obviously, which thanks, honey. And then we had help as well. But then I would come home and I would draw at night. Literally, I went from like sketching in the morning to sketching at night because I couldn't do it in the mornings anymore, or not the same way.
Yeah.
And I was tired a lot, but I was excited. I was really excited as well. So
Wow.
But balancing it is always this thing of like, sometimes I draw at night and I'm thinking I feel guilty that I'm drawing at night because I should probably like be checking on the kids, for instance. Not as much anymore because they're older, but
Right.
it was that thing, yes. There's also the thing of like,
Wow.
when I had kids, I stopped doing animation.
Is that
I had Lily.
Oh wow, I didn't know
That
that.
is the reason. The reason I stopped doing actual animation is because I had Lily, and
Wow.
and I had this one little story where at one point like I was working on this working on a series of animation for this movie,
Yeah.
and I was doing this, and I really loved that particular project, and I was working on it. And animation has a particularity, like even when you're not drawing, your brain is still thinking about it. You're thinking about the frames, you're counting frames, you're like, it's never really done until it's totally done.
Yeah.
And it's out of your hands.
Yeah.
And at one point, my wife comes up running and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, what's going on?" And I had been holding Lily, my daughter, in my arms, and she'd been crying. She'd been hungry, but I was so into my head that I had not noticed
Wow.
that she was crying, and it freaked me out. It really like shook me to my core, and I was like realizing like animation is such a demanding activity.
Yeah.
Not just the simple fact of drawing the frames,
Right.
but the toll it takes on your brain.
Yeah.
That I made a shift, a conscious shift at the time to focus my work more on design, look more for design jobs than animation, and that's why I stopped. Because I used to direct commercials, and then at that time I was like, okay, I'm going to shift more to design because I could do an image and just not think about it ever again afterwards. I could do an image in a couple of hours and I'll be done, and that was it. I didn't have to like my brain. So that was a conscious decision.
So Pascal, I wanted to know too, just kind of like, like we've been through a lot, whether it's on a personal like self journey, like art journey, or like in the animation industry as you're art directing. What do you feel like is the hardest hardship you've been through, and then how did you overcome that? John?
Well, I mean, the hardest hardship is like this incredible feeling I have no idea what I'm doing. Well, let me explain this because it's I would think about this, right? I think for an artist, like because especially if you're passionate about what you do, you tend to want to grow constantly. So that comes back to what you were saying earlier about like you're never quite at the level that you think you want to be at, right? This sort of like you have this idea in your head of where you want to be at, and it's like a horizon line. The closer you get to it, the further away it goes. But more than that, the closer you get to it, the more you see the possibilities of what you don't know, right? Of all the rest of the world, and you're like, it's like a never-ending like sea. But then you're being put in the position of like being responsible for other people, because there's a very big difference between like when you're doing work and you know that someone else is going to take the responsibility for giving you notes and feedback and guide you. And it's a complete different mentality when you're in charge and you have to give notes to other people, because then at that point they're looking up to you for guidance. And that's a different mentality. And you're still like, oh my God, I am still learning. How am I going to give those people notes? How am I going to help them grow? Right. So I think that has been like the biggest hardship for me. It's like being okay with the fact that like I only know so much, but I am able to actually help people find their way. This sort of struggle with like it's not exactly the imposter syndrome. It is a form of it, I guess, but it's more like it's okay to not know everything, to move on with it. And you know, some days are good, some days are bad, and some days it's really, really difficult. But to me, that's definitely the biggest difficulty.
Right. Wow. I mean, again, the most humble artist in the world. Last question before we go into live Q&A. What advice can you give young artists to help sharpen their storytelling skills, which your work has a ton of, which I think makes that resonate with people?
So it's really funny because when you say like, it's you know, if I tell you to think about the color red, you can only think about it if you know what blue and yellow and green and black and white is, right? Because it's you can't think about that in isolation. So to give one advice, and that topic is really like the same way. You can't just give one advice without thinking about all the other stuff. So, but it's a combination of things. But one thing I would say for me, when I do an image like this, for instance, right? I don't know if you can pause on this one, but the main thing, or even on this one, the main thing that I do is I try to give you the sense that something's happened before and something is probably going to happen after. So what you're looking at is a moment in between moments. What that does is in your brain, the image lives beyond the confines of the frame. You know that the world is bigger because something's happened before. You get this idea of the passage of time. And when you get the idea of the passage of time as the basis for a story. I try also most of the time to not overdo the story, meaning like I suggest storyline like this, for instance. It's very suggestive, but nothing is very said. At least in those, like even in this, where like you can clearly see there's people enjoying like a summer afternoon, it's starting to rain. You know what it is, but nothing is overstated. So it's just a matter of suggesting enough storyline and the sort of idea of passage of time, so that the audience can project themselves into the image and figure out what could happen. It makes it interactive and it pulls you in. It's like an active type of like viewership of the image, like something like this. It's more clear because it's more direct. It's probably less interesting, but you still get this idea that something's happened before. Like this one. This is a great example. Right. On this. That's my son used to just. That kid got up there somehow, and you don't know how he's going to come down. And I think the caption on the image was like, "Now what?" or something like this, right? Or those types of stories are like this. So the idea of passage of time for me is extremely important, much more than the way the image looks, the lighting, or any of this. This all helps. Lighting helps with like staging, pushing the emotion, fine-tuning the emotion, I would say. All that sort of stuff. But it's really this idea of like that, you know, what happened before, what's going to happen after, and it's open to interpretation. Amazing.
Wow, that's really cool. Like, I'm going to incorporate that into my work. So Pascal, if you don't mind, we can go into the live Q&A from the attendees.
Sure.
So Crystal Padilla, you don't have to come on camera, but can you hear us? Do you have audio?
Yeah,
okay,
I can hear you guys.
Okay, cool. Do you want to ask Pascal?
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of your work, by the way. I just want to say that. But I just wanted to know what advice you have for a person that struggles with creative confidence.
I'm sorry, that struggles with creative
confidence.
Creative confidence. Oh, cool. Well, hey, welcome to the club. Well, confidence. Okay, so first of all, confidence is something that is it's not necessarily innate. It's something you can build. It's a skill. It's like a muscle. You can sharpen and you can grow. Confidence comes from like knowing what you're doing mostly. If you know what you're doing, then you're gonna have more confidence. And in the creative process, though, there's a portion of something you know, and the biggest part of creation is pushing yourself past those boundaries to go to the unknown. And that's where like this sort of like lack of confidence happens because in order to be creative, you have almost to push yourself where you don't know and try to find a way back, right? That's the whole dilemma about creativity. And if you go too far, then people don't understand. If you don't go far enough, it's boring. So it's fine. That's fine line. But what you can do, or I would imagine, I mean, that's what I try to do, is like have a few things you know how to do that you understand. This, how can I explain this? Let me try to, when you're drawing, you have a dialogue that happens in your head constantly. Everyone, Bobby does, I do, you do, everybody on this chat does, even people who are not really big artists do. And the more time you spend on drawing, the more you're going to go deep down into this dialogue. At some point, you want to be able to direct this dialogue and ask yourself some very non-subjective questions. The question is such as like, you look at an image and you pull back and says, what am I looking at? Literally ask yourself those questions with those words. If you know the story, it's going to be a little bit harder, but if you can objectively look at the image and says like, I am looking at this and this and this, and or I don't understand what's going on there, or if you can like pick out if your image works or not by asking yourself the simple questions like, is the story clear? Can it be clearer? Can it be more direct? Then you're going to be able to, how is the word in English? To put to the side the doubts that you have about certain things. Because, you know, when you draw, you're going to make a mark for a hand, for an eye, for a color, for something. And you're going to have 15 questions. Is it the right mark? Should it be darker? Should it be lighter? Should it be blue? Should it be red? Should it be there at all? If you can ask yourself the question like, is it needed? And is it helping understand the story? Then you stop thinking about the subjective qualities of like, is it pretty? Does it need to be more blue or whatever? As long as it works. That's how I do it, at least. That helps me not with being more confident in my artistic skill, but being more confident in my storytelling skill through art. And then for the rest, I'm just like, well, I mean, some people are going to like my art, some people are not going to like it. Sometimes I like my art, sometimes I don't like it. But I'll go through this system and then keep moving. To the next
So it really comes from like a storytelling standpoint for you.
For me, it's always a story point. Like, and in fact, more of my later stuff are really just that. There was a time there when I discovered Photoshop where I was focused mostly on the on how to handle Photoshop. So a lot of those images feel like more like pretty images because I wasn't quite sure what I was doing with it.
Sure.
But as soon as I got the handle of it, I got back to storytelling, and that's my number one thing. I can't draw a pretty image. If you ask me to draw an image that's good, no, let me explain this. If you ask me to draw an image that is a nice image, like when I do a lot of covers, for instance, and I have a hard time with covers because most of the time what they want is like a particular look. And very often I'll do a sketch and like, this sketch works, I'm done with it. And they're like, well, can you finish it? And like, it's finished. And they're like, no. Can you like render it out? And like, I don't know, like this, for instance, to me, this is a finished piece, but it's very brushstroke, very much like this. And very often I'll get feedback like, now with experience, now with experience, I know that like, if you go to the next one, the one of the kids on the staircase, if I do stuff like this for a cover, the number one thing they'll tell me is like, can you define the facial features more? I know this now with experience, but I like it like this because it works. It tells me the whole story, but they'll need something else. And that's where like, at some point you have to, I put the artist side of me down. I just think about the professional. Like, okay, they're asking for a product and that product is not to be pretty, it's to be recognizable instantly by people who are not artists. And that's how I do it. So there's, this double dialogue that happens in my head.
Fascinating. That's awesome.
Did that help answer your question or?
Yes, that was so helpful. My goodness. Thank you so much.
Oh, good. Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. And Nanya, do you wanna ask Pascal your question? Sorry.
Oh yeah. I'd love to. Thank you.
No
Wait,
problem.
is that me?
Yes. Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much for the talk, first of all. It's been really great seeing your work. My question was that, like, how do you motivate yourself, or like, is there anything you do or draw when you don't want to draw at all? Like, you just absolutely have no mood to draw?
That doesn't really happen to me that often, to be honest. I've had these questions many times over the years. What it does happen sometimes is like there's certain things I don't want to draw. Meaning I always had this desire, I want to create something. Sometimes I do get mental fatigue, meaning like I I have this image of a crowd in my head. I'm like, oh, I'd like to draw. I was like, I'm too tired. I'm not gonna do this. And that's like very akin to like not wanting to draw. But I always want to create something. So it just changed the way I draw. Like, look, the images on the screen now. These are done on my iPad. A lot of the other ones you've seen were done on Photoshop. Some of the early ones you've seen were done actually on paper. Some of them are done by actually doing like an actual drawing first. And some like this are just done by doing big masses that then I cut down with my eraser. I realized that making myself stuck in one way to approach the way I draw, the way I create images, was what would really frustrate me, because I never felt I was. I'm always feeling like when I see an image at the end, I have no idea how I got there. And I'm going to get somewhere at some point, and it's going to look a certain way, and I don't even know what way that's going to be, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. So I allow myself to not necessarily reinvent the wheel every single time, because now with all the experience, I have a lot of processes in my head that help me like to do different steps. But I don't necessarily approach all the images the same way, which days I don't want to draw with lines, I will draw with shapes. Days I don't draw with shapes, I'll start with just with colors. Days I don't start with colors, I'll start with like literally like, I'll take a stipple brush and start working with a stipple brush. Like when I did this one, for instance, I was in a mood where I just did not want to do what I was doing before, and it looked really, really different. And I think I did everything like this with just the hard round brush in Photoshop, and then just like play with the opacity and stuff like this to get the look. And I was like, oh, that's very different to me, and it looks really good. I'm very happy I did that, right? But it's not something to say. I didn't, before doing this image, as I was doing this image, I did not know what my process for doing it was. I was establishing as it was going along. But what I was looking for here was like clarity of storytelling in terms of like, what am I looking at? Is it understandable? In this particular case, I was trying to get the mood of the image more than anything else. I was trying to get as little detail as possible to make you understand where it was. So I was like, oh, is this working? Is this not? Is this too much? You know, is this tree too flat? Is it too much on the tree? I actually took stuff out of the tree because I was like, oh, there's too many details on it. And when I first did the characters, they were like just blending into the background. So I mean, they're dark, right? And it doesn't really match, but it tells a story. Things like this. I was establishing the process as I was going along. So it's not as much the idea that I don't want to draw. It's just like I don't want to do the same thing I've done before, and I just need a challenge for my brain. It's just, the creation part is always there. So.
That's great. That's great.
By the way, to add to this, there's a second part to that answer, because that's something that's very important. When I would do this earlier on, by the way, we were very much encouraged in our school to do that, to not necessarily like settle on one way of drawing or in one way of approaching a piece, but on different ways, just so that we could keep creating. And in my mind, I was thinking, man, when I get to start working, how is that going to affect me if people keep asking me for type of images? I can never give them the same one over and over. And I can tell you now, with like a little bit more than 20 years of career, it's never been an issue. In fact, the ability to create different ways has helped me work with so many different parts of animation industry, of publishing industry, of comics, of music videos. I worked in stop motion. I worked in a bunch of different things, and every single time, the ability to like change has been great, because most clients, not all, but most clients, I would say 90% of clients, are more interested in the story you're telling with the image at the end than the actual look in itself. For covers, it's a little different, but even that you can fake it, the look at the end. So.
Yes. I mean that's awesome. Thank you, Ananya, for your question.
Yeah, thank you so much for the answer. It was really helpful.
Good. I'm glad.
Kirfana, what do you think? What questions do you have for Pascal?
Hi, thank you for the talk. It's been really helpful. I actually wanted to know, you draw this cat a lot in your comic strips, kitty cat. I wanted to know if you have a real inspiration for drawing them.
If I have an inspiration for drawing kitty cat, like this cat right there?
Yeah, who's the real inspiration behind it, maybe?
So I don't have a cat right now, but I grew up, my mom loved cats, and my grandma loved cats. And when we grew up in the south of France, we had like dozens and dozens of cats running around the neighborhood. We always had like at least 3 cats in the house, if not more. And then my grandma was this lady would feed all the cats in the neighborhood. She would put nails down at the bottom of her building, and all the cats would come. So I've always loved cats. They're my favorite animals. My wife is allergic to cats, so we can't have cats right now. But we have a dog, and now that we have actually where we are, we have 3 cats that run around the backyard, and we feed them. So that's where it comes from. I just love cats. I've always loved cats.
Okay.
And then so the next like Mary G. Do you want to ask a question for Pascal? Oh wait, can people hear me? I don't know how Zoom works. Mary?
Oh, I see the question. How do you get over
Mary,
the
what's up, man? Go ahead. Mary? Ooh. So Mary asked, Mary, your mic, I heard you, but then you like cut out. But Mary,
I think you heard me. Bobby, because I was saying like, oh, Mary, I see the question there.
So Mary asked, like, how do you get over creative burnout?
Right. That's a really good one. I've had a couple of times where I've had creative burnout in terms of like I had overworked and I didn't want to work. The best thing for me to do is take a break. Obviously, I think it's the most obvious answer, but it's not always possible. It's not always possible because very often it happens while you're working, especially if you're working in the industry, working for a studio or something like this. You have to go to work every day. But what I do in terms of like a creative burnout is like instead of trying to create something new all the time, I try to rely on the skills I have. So instead of like trying to like come up with like new ideas, I'll try to like go over some of the images I've done or some of the stuff I have to do and just focus on the skills as opposed to like focusing on the inspiration part of it. What that does is like it helps me like free my brain from trying to better myself all the time in terms of our best myself. I think is probably the best way to put it. You know, as an artist, you're always trying to do better than the last time you've done, and we have this really weird thing, and like we'll do a piece that we're really proud of, and the very next day we feel like we still have to reinvent everything because the piece is already like a day old, or we have to do something else, right? When I get the creative burnout situations, I try to like shut down my brain from those thoughts and just focus on the skills themselves. That way I'll focus on like, ooh, how am I going to do this fire? Or how am I going to do like backlight? Or how am I going to draw a character? Or how am I going to draw a cat? Or how am I going to compose an image? Most of the time it's how am I going to compose an image. I rely a lot on writing. I'll write a lot, especially when I have a creative burnout, because I find that writing is a lot like drawing, where you have to like let yourself go a little bit and then like use certain techniques to like help you go through. Techniques being just like writing letters. So I'll just like let my mind flow. And after like 10-15 minutes of just writing, so here I am typing away, something will start happening. And that's actually how I did most of the stories, by the way. The strips you're seeing on the screen right now, the kitty cat strips, I started doing them at the beginning of 2020 when the pandemic was hitting. I was in a place where creatively I couldn't or wouldn't draw those sketches anymore because I thought the world was not in a good place. I was like, I had a hard time doing those types of images. Because I was seeing what's going on around the world and I had a hard time. So I started doing writing stuff, and I did the first kitty cat story like this, and that's why those stories have such a introspective mood to them. It's because they started at a time when I was incredibly like worried about the future for my kids, for myself, for my family, for the world in general. And I still wanted to create, but I couldn't do the same thing I was doing, and I did that, and it was such a phenomenal way for me to explore new avenues of creativity, feel like I was still producing and creating and growing in a different way, which is something I've always wanted to do anyhow, because graphic novels, this was like a strip that was like all like, a few images and you told a full story and you can move on. So that was my way of dealing with it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, let's see. Mary, we on you, and
I think Mary's sick. Is my mic working? No, it's not working.
sorry.
Kylie, yeah, that's the reason they have this vibe, the strips, is because of when they were done. If you look at some of the older strips I have, they're much bouncier. They're much not necessarily happier, because I don't think these are necessarily unhappy. They're more introspective, and I like the fact that I create those characters, and then I kind of have some rules for those characters, right? So when I bring in my wife, for instance, they're much happier. When I bring the kids, they're much bouncier, and you can tell because the colors pop as well.
Yeah.
But the world of Kitty Cat and Manly Men was something that is different for me, and I love exploring that. I love, that's like this one, like the one right there where it's all dark. I'm like, every single time I would do stuff for work, I would always be asked or suggested not to use dark and desaturated colors because people wouldn't buy them, they wouldn't sell, all that sort of stuff. And I was like, well, I'm gonna try something else because I think it's kind of cool and it's different. And I did, and it's really
oh my gosh, and then, sorry, go ahead, Pascal. Sorry.
No, and it's interesting because then like I would get all those like things. Are you okay? Are you depressed? And something like, no,
no. Honestly, I mean, like, I love your vulnerable, like, kind of like expression, to put stuff out there on IG. You're so, you put yourself out there, and I haven't had the courage to do that, but maybe I'll build there at some point. But
for years, to that point, for years I didn't have the courage to do that, because for years I was always trying to like do images that would please people. I would do a lot of images for myself that I won't post because these are not going to work. These are not going to be good. And then I was realizing, but that's like being able to do something, not doing it. And when you do something, it's like triangulation. It's like, it's like when you play I don't know, Minecraft or whatever, you have those maps at the beginning, and the maps only light up when you go there. And I feel like for art it's the same thing. Sometimes you have to explore different areas, and it gives you a different light on what you already know how to do, and it helps you get stronger, better, deeper, have a better understanding.
Oh my gosh!
So I love exploring that world.
Nishi, did you have a question for Pascal?
Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you, man. You sound great.
Great. I'd like to say I'm really excited to be here and to be able to talk to you. I had a quick question. So I actually studied product design, and I have a master's degree in it, and I've been working in that industry, but I've always wanted to do illustrations, and I've done a tad bit of freelancing in that field. But I want to take up this professionally. And I remember Pascal talking about how good his school was. So I'm unsure where I should, step forward, because I have some set of skills, and I don't know whether I should look for work in the studio or continue freelancing, or look at schools as options, which is an expensive one. But, I don't know where to head to actually set foot in the world professionally. Right.
Again, first of all, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for the kind words. Really appreciate it. I really appreciate you being here as well. Every one of you, thank you so much for showing up. So,
oh my God.
Just want to say that. The second is like the type of question you ask is a very difficult one to answer for a couple different reasons. I'm going to try to give you an answer, but I'm trying to explain just where I'm coming from. For one of them is like, what, you just gave me like a minute and a half like a description of your situation, but I don't really know the whole context. I don't know where you live. I don't know what the industry is like over there. I don't exactly know what your set of skills is. And on top of this, I'm not an authority. I'm not like, I won't be able to tell you this is good or this is bad. It's just not how it works. But this is what I can tell you. The freelance world is a lifestyle. Working in a studio is also a lifestyle. You have to figure out what you want before you can decide that, right? Meaning like working as a freelancer, you work at home most of the time. You have to be okay and not being able to know where the next paycheck is going to come from most of the time, or be very good about managing your own time. Working in the studio, you give up a little bit of your freedom, but then you have a certain security of the paychecks coming back. In both situations, you're going to grow. When you work in the studio, you're going to feed off every single person at the studio, and you're going to learn things that you will never be able to learn on your own. But when you work on your own, you're gonna like reach depths of your brain that you didn't think were possible because you've never had enough time to spend on your own to go there, even if sometimes it's uncomfortable. So doing a bit of both is actually great. Both will work and both will make you grow as an artist. In terms of money, freelancing is usually a bit hard at the beginning, but then once you get the ball rolling, then you actually do a really good living, and it's fine. Studio work is like more steady, but you don't usually grow, in my experience, as fast in terms of like pay rates as you would as a freelancer. But then that's not necessarily true for everybody. Schools is a very touchy subject right now. I went to a school in France that was free, or basically free, and schools in the U.S. are incredibly expensive. And I don't want to like say yes or no for a school, because again, it's going to depend on people, it's going to depend on their situation, it's going to depend on what they're looking for. But you know, it's a very big expense to go to a school in the U.S. In your particular situation, I think the question you should probably ask yourself is more like, what is your goal? And even if you don't have a set goal, at least try to define one that will serve as a guiding light for you. Not that you necessarily want to get there and stop, but at least when you're lost, you know, it's a little bit like you're lost at sea and you have this light on the shore and you're like, I want to go towards this direction. If you have a particular goal, and if you can define why that goal is important to you, it will help you eliminate the choices that are not real choices, like easy choices, for instance, or hard choices that you think maybe I should go for something a little harder because it's worth the thing. Having a particular direction that you go into is really going to help you strain out, eliminate the options that are not viable for you. And sometimes it's also going to lead you with the hardest options to go through. But if that's what you really want, that's what you should go for.
Thank you so much, Pascal.
My pleasure.
and Madison, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear
Okay.
me all right?
Yeah, you can turn your volume up a little bit, but you're on with Pascal.
All right.
Feel like a radio DJ. You're on with Pascal Campion.
I can hear you, Madison.
So, first of all, thank you. I love your work, and it's really exciting to be able to hear you explain everything and hear you speak. So I was wondering, what sort of like warm-ups you like to do, or even just like sort of practice, like how you kind of get yourself going, if you do any sort of warm-ups or practices. Like I'm in art school right now, so I just love asking that question because it's interesting to see how other people do it.
I like to bike. I get up every morning and I go on bike rides. I like to swim. I like to do I do yoga these days because it helps with stretching. I do stuff like this. But are you talking specifically about art exercise, or is that what you mean?
Yeah,
or,
like
okay.
yeah, like warm-ups you do, like maybe before projects or before, I guess, just like how you like start off drawing.
I don't really have any warm-ups. I just go for it. Like those sketches a day probably are my warm-ups, but they've become more of a they never really were warm-ups. They were more like a creative outlet before I started the workday, not as a warm-up. Mainly because when I was starting doing those, I was working at a place where I wasn't actually doing any art. But no, I don't have any particular warm-ups. I just start drawing. Okay, let me try to go deeper in this. The reason I don't do any warm-ups is because when I was in college, that's all I did. I sketched a lot, and I realized that I sketched so much that I would spend most of my energy in the sketches. And when I would try to do a final, I had zero energy left for this, and most of it, I didn't have any desire to redo the sketch over to clean it up. So what I do now, because the art for me is not necessarily the most important part, is I try to get an idea across, and whatever way I've done it, I'll try to make it pass as a final. Just the reason my images have this particular look, where sometimes you feel it's very spontaneous, because it is. The hardest part is like when you do this for work, but then over the course of like experience and stuff, you find ways to make it pass as a final piece. The final piece is just what you present, literally. So So that, for instance, I remember when I did that one, that was my warm up. I literally started by the elephant up in the left corner there, attached with the trunk, and I drew all the other ones one after the other ones, and that was it. And I was like, boom, I'm done. That was warm ups for me are what I do. If I start to do too many sketches before, then I lose the spontaneity and the ability to capture this sort of like life that I like to have in my images.
Thank you so much for answering that. It's really helpful.
My pleasure. Yeah, like I'm seeing like LK Elmer said, like it takes me so much more time to sketch than to dive in. It's sometimes I do have to sketch when I have to do like a composition that's like more in depth. There's like, you know, like if we have to do some shots or some scenes that require like, you know, camera motions and stuff like this. But it's always it's always a structure for me to paint on or to draw on. I like getting to the end result as quickly as possible. Mainly because I don't have a lot of patience. That was one of my biggest thing when I'm always, you know, every other day when like I'm considering like stop being an artist, I'm like, because I don't have the patience to stay on an image for too long, which is one of the reasons my images are so fast. I get bored very quickly, so I like stuff to go fast. So. Hello? Did I lose everybody?
Oh, sorry. I mean, like, I know you. Do you have a hard out? Like,
I don't.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
No, I'm good. It's Saturday. So.
Okay. I was just trying to respect your time. So let's see. Really quickly. So, oh man, there's so many.
I can try to get all the questions because I'm seeing people talk here. I don't know what the other.
Gotcha. Let's bring on. Sorry. Forgive me, everybody. Like, do you have any tips? Okay, cool. Perma, I'm gonna bring you on whether you like it or not, because that's how we do things here at Rise of Pen Animation. Perma, do you have a question for Pascal? Oh, yeah, I just put her on the spot, or
hello?
Him or her on the spot. Yeah, Perma, what's up?
Yeah. Hi everyone. Thank you to speak this meeting.
No problem.
Sir,
Hello, nice to meet you.
I have a question with us. Hi, I love pictures very much. Many pictures I saw the relationship between the dad and son. How to feel to draw this dad and son relationship? How to relate to this?
Oh, I'm sorry, Prema, like, what was your question, Prema?
Speak is clearly, no?
Yeah, I can hear you. We can hear you.
The dad and son images. How to inspire to do this many things.
Yeah. So, are you asking like what inspired, Pascal to make these images? Is that what it is?
With dad and son images.
Yeah.
Let me try to answer that. It's like what Bobby said. Like you're asking me where the inspiration comes from. It literally comes from like every day. It comes from like everything that I live, experience, that I like, that I dislike, that I see or hear or draw. When I sit down to do those images, the ones that are here, these are my daily sketches. And the reason I was in this practice was for one thing to do something creative, but also because when I would do stuff for work, when I would do art for work, it was always very directed, and I wanted to be able to like create for the simple pleasure of creating, trying to like take images I had in my dreams and make some sort of idea or story that people could understand, even if it was as simple as like a couple of bees flying through a field of yellow flowers. And that was the one thing I was also trying to do, is like to not edit myself, meaning like as simple as the idea could be, like this, cookies in front of the door, I was just going to go for it and see what would happen, because I would draw very fast. And especially when I started this, I was much younger, so I had a whole lot of energy. Now that I don't have as much energy, and now that I don't have a lot of energy now, but like there's a different energy that you have when you're like, you know, in your 20s and your 30s that you have in your 40s and later. So I was like just going for it and see what would happen. So that's where this actually was based on my daughter, because at the time she was the one after, because she was doing like all the tea parties, and I was like, oh, I'll do a tea party because she likes tea parties. And I didn't think too much about it. So I had the main idea of like her at the tea party, but all the rest came as I was drawing. So I didn't have an idea of the finished piece. I just knew that was going to be the anchor to the piece. So what I call the anchor is like, I like all my pieces to have at least one part that you look at and you know instantly what it is. And the rest can be like free-handed, because once you have the anchor, your brain is going to use it as a place to orient everything else. So even if other stuff are not as clear, as long as you have the anchor, your brain is going to find a meaning to everything else around it. So that's how I do most of those images, actually. That's why very often in my images, if you look at some of my city images, very often you'll see a woman walking around with a red coat. That's my anchor. That you know, because very often those shapes are very abstract. Or like this, right? The anchor here is like her with the yellow coat and the red dish. Everything else is fairly like big blocky shapes. And if you took her out, you wouldn't understand what it is. But because that little portion of the image, which is like maybe what, like 1/50th of the image, is in there, and you recognize it instantly, everything else falls in place. And then your eye starts to wander, and you see the little bike at the top, and you get the idea of a sense of story happening. So that's where the inspiration comes from and how I make it put together to tell a story. It comes from like absolutely anything and everything. I literally, I would sit down at my table and start sketching, and literally it'd be like 10-15 minutes into a drawing and not knowing where I was going with the drawing. At some point, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just saw a bird fly through, or I just saw a fish on TV or something like that. And then I was going to do an image about that. That's how these came.
Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Ooh, this is good too.
There are a few questions I'm seeing there that I would like to talk about, because I think they're pretty good. One of them is by,
please.
One of them is by Art of Muriel. Oh wait, there's two things with the question. Where's the second one? Shoot. And there was one about drawing for your audience versus them, which I think is a really important one to answer.
Yes.
But first,
yes.
Art of Muriel, you have a question about like, you attended a talk. Are you there? Do you want to ask the question? I'd love to speak to you.
Mariel? Ooh,
maybe she's gone. But her question was like, I'll read her question. I attended a talk in the past where you spoke as a guest, and like earlier, I do remember saying that when you create stories, you show the in-between of the story. Like the viewers would kind of know what happened before and what would happen after. What advice would you give to someone who is absolutely clueless on where to even get the stories from? Could you articulate your process? So the reason I like this question a lot is because I've actually had the same questions for myself, and I even did stories about that. For the longest of time, I always felt I had nothing interesting to say. And actually, to this point, I still don't necessarily think I have anything interesting to say. But what I did realize over time is like there's a very big difference between like what you say and how you say it. You can talk about the weather. You can talk about people just being in the field and having a good time, or not even having a good time. And how you tell it will make it interesting. And by focusing on that, focusing more on the like how I tell a story, it made me less afraid of trying different storylines. It's a weird thing, because the issue I had at the beginning was like, where do I even get storylines from? And then it became more like, any storyline could work. It's just how I'm going to tell it. And what I found about telling a story is like, there's so many different ways. It's not just finding the way to like make events articulate one after the other. It's about tempo. It's about how to guide the audience's eye. It's about like where to put an ending, where to put a middle, how to like build up a point, how to make a point clear. As simple as like, this guy likes this girl. How do I make that clear over the course of like 3 or 4 panels or 10 pages, or, you know, a sequence? when you start focusing on those types of stuff, the stories actually come because there's stories everywhere. You can make a story about like you attending this panel and what you're doing while we're not seeing you, for instance. That could be a whole story in itself. It's just like figuring out which part of the story you want to like focus on and bring it out. So you have Art of Marielle. I hope you can see this afterwards because it's a really good question. It's a very important one because I know I used to like struggle with this tremendously in terms of sort of realizing that it was a non-issue if you start focusing on like how to tell the story and just start literally with like, you got up this morning, something happened. You heard something on the news, talk about that. You had a conversation with your mom the other day. You can talk about that. She made you upset. She made you happy. You saw something that made you happy. You saw a bird fly through the window. That could be something. It doesn't have to be a big moment, but it's the way you're going to tell it. It's going to make it interesting. So that I think is a very important thing for most people to remember. Stories are important. The way you tell them is almost more important.
Right. So thank you so much.
Was that you, Maria?
Yeah. That was me.
Cool. Well,
sorry. Really quickly, but I mean, like I'm just like juggling all this kind of stuff. So the second question was, Muriel was like, can you articulate on your process, or is it different every time? What do you think, Muriel? Is that a thing that we already covered, or
if you
Go ahead.
can tell us more, I mean, I'm happy to listen. Yeah.
Well, the process is a little bit like you said, but to go more in depth about it, these days what I do a lot is I write ahead of time what I want to do. That's a new process for me from this past year, actually. I didn't used to write ahead of time. I used to like draw and write at the same time. Now I write ahead of time because I find myself where I have too many ideas now to put into one particular story. So I write everything and I edit down to the minimum. And my process is to like come down to the minimum amount of words that I can that would will still make it understandable. So my process is more about like put everything I can into the initial thoughts and then reduce edit until like it almost breaks it, and you can just get the essence of the idea. What I find is like very often I think I'm telling one story, but I'm really telling a different story, or at least in the idea I have 2, maybe 3 different stories that are worth being told, or that I can take out. So I just try to focus on each one of them. Very often I also find that the stories are just a vehicle for an emotion that I'm trying to talk about. I think that's probably one of the most important things I've discovered this past year for me is like I'm much more driven by articulating emotions through actions rather than like plots. Meaning like I'm less likely to do like a bank heist than I am doing a relationship between a father and his son watching TV. You will find the more you start focusing on this, that there are different types of storytellers. You know, there's a Michael Bay, there's a Steven Spielberg, and then there's like a French new wave artist that will talk about like, you know, a grain of salt falling onto your steak. The type of storyteller you are is really up to you to figure out. But I do have an exercise for you if you want to figure that out. One thing I would suggest you to do is to make a little diary of your day from the moment you get up to the moment you go to bed, and try to do a sequence of images based on that, almost like a 24-hour comic, and see the ones where you're going to focus on. Because by doing this, if something happens to you every day, the moments you're going to pick are going to be a good indication for you where your mind goes to the most. Meaning, like if you pick you brushing your teeth, or if you pick you like talking to your significant other, you pick the moment where like you're really angry at your boss, or you pick the moment where you have something, right? You'll have an indication of the type of stories you want to tell, and you can start focusing on that.
Beautiful.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Muriel. So we'll close it out. Pascal, you can enjoy your weekend. We'll close it out with a beautiful question from Janisha. Janisha, do you want to come on and ask Pascal your question in person?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you
Can you hear me okay?
for coming. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, awesome. I just wanted to say I love seeing your motivational comic panels on Instagram. They're so inspiring. And thank you so much for those because they're so uplifting. So my question was, what are some traits? What are some important traits as an art director that you should have when you're working with other people?
Great question. Great question.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Be aware of your ego, I think, is probably one of the first ones. The reason I'm saying this is because usually when you get to be an art director, you tend to like be chosen because you're really good at something and something wants you to look. But you're working with a team of people that all have just as much, if not more, richness than you and their art and their world and their life. And I find that like helping people extract, push, and grow their own art only helps the whole project in general. As an art director, I feel like the word directing is really this: you're not controlling, you're directing the flow of their energy, but you really have to like help them grow, get out of the way, and make sure that everything comes back to like what the vision is at the end. But there's so much richness that comes from every single person on the show, and I think that's a big thing to I'm a horrible art director, by the way, but
you're good.
The ones I've worked on that were really good are really help you grow. I remember working with this one guy, Shell, at the Ben Lab. When that was like in the early 2000s. I was just starting out, but his way of directing was like, we'd get a pitch from the agency, and he would literally like just give it to me and say, "Hey, go, just do your take on it." And I would go in my own little corner, and for like a day, 2 days, 3 days, I would just work on it. And he'd be like, "Hey, you doing okay? You doing okay?" And then eventually, when I was ready, I would show it to him. You look at it, it's like, "Oh, it's great." And he would just move things around just a little bit. It's like, "Why don't I try like this way?" And it was like, he had this like magic touch where he would take what I had and see where I was having issues and like think, okay, just if we can just do this, it would just, and things fell into place, right? And sometimes I said, well, clients want something different, so maybe we could just try to do this. He was incredibly good about like, let me try, let me explore, let me give it my own spin on it and invest myself into it. And what was coming out of it was an energy, which is much more important than the final result of the energy, because if you can capture this, and if the audience is going to react to it, you as a worker, as a team member, are going to be happy to work on a team, and everybody's going to benefit from that. If you're over controlling, people are going to do work that's probably going to be technically good, but might not be super happy on. For me, like each project is a life experience. You're going to spend anywhere from like 2 to 3 weeks to like a year, 2 years, 3 years on a project with a particular team. You want to enjoy that experience. You want everybody to learn and grow from it. So that's what I think is important as an art director.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. That helps a lot. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, let's see. Sorry. Thank you everyone for coming aboard and joining us, and thank you, Pascal, for your time and your wisdom, and I mean, like, it's invaluable, and thank you so much for doing this. And guys, I mean, like, as we all said, I'm just kind of like, let's do this thing together. I mean, like, whether we are hustling to get things made, or we're hustling to get into the industry. I'm gonna start my video because who cares? And then whatever we're doing, like every week, every month, whatever we're hustling towards, like, let's do it together. And we're all working hard and trying to get our stuff made, or like our goals like made, and our dreams accomplished, and that kind of stuff. So I'm with you guys. We're all in the same boat. Pascal, myself, you, whatever our goals are, I mean, we're hustling every day. So I mean, it never stops, to be honest. Right, Pascal? Speak on that, brother.
Yeah.
Speak
Well,
on it.
actually, I was actually going to ask you a question.
No, don't.
Bobby, where were you born?
I was born in Guam because my mom was in the military. So like every 4 years. Yep. Go ahead.
And when did you come to
Oh,
live in the U.S.?
So Guam, I guess, is officially like in the U.S., but like my mom.
I know, but I mean the mainland.
Oh,
I know.
Sure. My mom was a recruiter in Mississippi, so like she went over there, and I was like the only brown kid in Mississippi for miles and miles. Yeah.
And then when you started out, you were working as an animator, correct?
Yeah.
And now you develop your own show. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Why aren't we interviewing you as opposed to me? I mean, because you're more the story here.
Yeah. I mean, because I'm not that interesting. But like, I mean, like, I think. I know I'm in the hot seat. Get out of here, Pascal. Jeez, man.
But I mean, seriously,
I'm kidding.
Think about it. I met you. You were so excited. You were a fan.
So embarrassed.
And now, over the course of just a few years, like what, 10 years, 12 years, maybe, you are developing your own show at Disney, one of the biggest, if not the biggest brand in the world, known for their excellence in storytelling. And on top of this, we're here because of you. Didn't you create this Rise Up Animation? Aren't you part of the founding member?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, it's a phenomenal example for everybody here to see success. This is it. It's inspiring. So thank you for having me, because I mean, I think it's often.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
We tend to see very often we tend to see obvious things, like people whose work we admire because of the images they put out or the animation they put out. But we sometimes don't fail to acknowledge like people that make it possible for us to see this. People like you, people who actually work for the community to make everybody have the ability to grow, to meet, to talk to people like me. It's you. So, thank you for that. I mean, this from the bottom of my heart. We need more people like you. And it's really hard.
Is it Pascal Campion or Pascal Champion? No, I'm just kidding. That was terrible. I want you to have the last word, Pascal. For everyone that's 160 people, we're like 260. So like, I want you to have last word. What can you tell the community? Would you say, Pascal? We can close out once you say it. Done. What would you? What can we tell people?
What can tell?
Yeah.
One thing I would say is that despite all the issues going on in the world right now, in terms of like animation, in terms of like creativity and art, you guys are probably in one of the best positions ever, because the world needs more and more artists. There's more stories to be told. There's so much more projects that I see. There was a moment there when I was like looking at portfolios and it was all dry. Everything was the same. And there's been an explosion in the past couple of years where there's all this incredibly new art, new thoughts, new unexpected projects and ideas, and people like you, everybody in this panel, who have this incredible richness and is willing, taking the step, the courage, the boldness to share it, to bring it out. And we need this. The world is a tapestry. It's made of all those millions and billions of colors and hues and differences, and every single one that makes the other one shine. So we need you. We need people like you to create. So that's what I would say.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Pascal. Beautiful. Thank you everyone for coming. My heart goes out to everyone, Pascal, everybody, someone who came on camera. So thank you everyone for attending this. This was a nice moment that we had with Pascal, all of us around the world. So yeah, I don't know what else to say, but thank you. And we'll see you again soon. Our paths will cross again soon. Myself,
I'm sure we will.
Pascal, everyone on the chat, we're going to be super excited to be working with you guys. Really, 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 you know, we're not even saying that, but it's going to happen. So thank you guys. Enjoy your weekend. Pascal,
You too.
we'll hook up again. Yeah. All right, everybody. Take care. Say goodbye.